Welcome to your MBA in Leadership and Management with Aspire Business School. We are now on to Module 5, where we look at groups and teams. We'll look at what groups are, what teams are, and when they function at their best. So let's look at the learning objectives for this particular module. We will first define groups and teams and understand what differences there are between them. You'll also then be able to understand and explain how effective group and team working can contribute to the performance of an organization. You'll also be able to define the dynamics and processes that occur within groups. You'll be able to explain the key features of intergroup dynamics, why it's important to managers, and how we can understand them. So let's start with asking, what is a group? So for the purposes of our work, a group is a collection of two or more people who work with one another to regularly achieve one or more common goals. Thinking about your work life and your personal life, what groups have you been part of that actually fall under this particular definition? Within an organization, there are two types of groups that can exist. The first is a permanent formal work group, which could be in the form of a steering committee or a board of directors. You could also have a temporary formal work group, which could be in the form of maybe a project group or an initiative that's being run by an organization that the group needs to lead and be involved in. Or it could be something like a regulatory board that's come together in order to discuss or investigate something happening in the company. We'd also recognize informal groups within your lives. So you have your friendship groups and other interest groups. You might want to go running, you go running in a group, or you might go to a book club and that's a group. So groups are a collective of individuals that get together to basically do the same thing. Now, groups are quite important within organizations because they actually help the organization meet their needs and also satisfy the needs of the individual members. Because if you remember from the module on motivation, individuals are motivated in many different ways. And so if you are part of a group and that's something you value as an individual, then the organization can help motivate you and satisfy that need by putting you in a group. Now let's look at the pros and cons, or the advantages and disadvantages of groups. The advantages of a group are that the group is brought together for a specific purpose. They will achieve some positive synergy when they start working together. They can actually become very highly cohesive and become very highly performing entities. The individuals will collaborate to achieve the joint goal. And the group of people that have complementary skills, attitudes, experiences, and viewpoints will actually enhance the accomplishment of the task and the decision making. So the great side of the group is that it can work really well together, it can actually achieve great things, and when you get the right people together in the right group to achieve the right task, they can actually do that much better. Now let's have a look at some potential disadvantages of groups within an organization. One of them is that the specific purpose of the group may conflict with the objectives of the organization or with people in different groups in the organization. The groups may result in negative synergy, especially if there are disruptive behaviors, ambiguous roles, or interpersonal conflicts between group members. I'm sure you've had interpersonal conflicts within your friendship group that you can remember that meant that there was a negative synergy in the group. The groups can also become highly cohesive, but actually work against the organizational work goals. So there could be cases where a group has been set a goal by the organization, but when they start working on it, they realize they have a better idea. So that's when groups can become a little bit of a disadvantage. You may have a moment in a group where some people might lift more weight than others. So some people work more than others, and others will just loaf around, which is the term we use in the UK, and allow others to carry the weight, and that can be a potential disadvantage of a group. Another potential disadvantage of groups is that Groups of people with similar opinions and viewpoints can end up becoming a little bit uncreative, and they end up having a bit of a tunnel vision. You may also have the case that the group then actually has a subgroup, so the people with differing opinions all gather together and actually create subgroups in a group, which effectively creates a dysfunctional group and potentially conflict. So there you have the potential advantages and disadvantages of a group. We can continue with some more advantages. So another advantage of a group is that people will form collectivist societies. They're likely to work well together in groups. So a collectivist society is a society that actually, where the people will work towards the better results for society in general, and they won't be individualist and focus on themselves. So societies like this work better in groups. Another thing is that when you when you organize people into groups, you clarify their goals and activities, and actually allows the individuals to work on large projects and complicated tasks. The groups can actually be an ideal collection of people to work on a particular task, so you put them together with their specific skills to complete a particular task. And also, informal groups can enable informal networks of individuals who support another to achieve the goals of an organization. So you might have an informal networking group in an organization that helps people to get promoted, to help them on their projects, and get support when they need it. Let's now continue to look at some disadvantages of groups. So for example, some people from individualistic societies may not necessarily work well in groups. And this may be the case when they are raised with the personal values of looking out for themselves, and they're put in a group and they may not work well together and create conflict. Now, the more people are organized into specific task-related activities, the more they might become different and form other groups working on different goals and activities, leading to very problematic intergroup relations. So they may create subgroups and start different projects of their own, which can create some conflict. The groups can actually be the wrong size, or a combination of people that is not cohesive to actually achieving what's necessary. That's another disadvantage of the group. And finally, a disadvantage of a group could be that with informal groups, you may have members whose goals and behaviors actually conflict with the goals of the organization, and this can be either intentional or unintentional. So for example, if you have an informal networking group in an organization and somebody is looking for a job, somebody else in that networking group may decide that they don't like them and they're not going to put them forward for a job or refer them positively. So that could be a potential disadvantage of a group. Now that we've looked at the advantages and disadvantages of the group, let's look at how you can manage groups for effectiveness. When it comes to performing a task in a group, the group needs to have a lot of very positive synergy. So they must all work well together, the personalities must match, and they must all get along in general. This also means they will put their personal things aside and work towards a greater good of the group. This also looks at the element of social loafing, which means that there will be some people in the group that don't pull their weight and work as hard as others. So when you want to have a group perform a task well, you must make sure that you are minimizing the amount of social loafing. The same applies to disruptive behavior. So in a group that works well, you have to make sure that you manage the disruptive behavior so it doesn't affect the overall performance of the group when it comes to achieving the task that they're together to achieve. Group effectiveness refers to the effectiveness of groups. So how effective are they? How skilled are they at achieving the goal that they set themselves? How well do they get there? How efficiently do they do it? And groups as open systems effectively means that an organization is created out of lots of groups where they optimize the sub-goals within the group to achieve the larger goal the group has been set. In order to make a group work well together, there are quite a few inputs that help that process happen. First of all, we look at the organizational setting. So what goals have been set for the group and what rewards are attributed to the goals being achieved. When you look at resources, whether that's technology, money, time, people, raw materials, spatial arrangements, so where do people sit? Are they in the same place? Are they located virtually? Is it a mixture of the two? And also the cultures and structures of value and support the group. So is there a spirit in the business of supporting the group? Does the group receive outside support as well as support internally? So the setting of the organisation is incredibly important as an input to allow the group to work effectively and achieve its goals. The other input to look at is the nature of the group task. So does the group understand the task that is before them? Do they all understand how they each individually work towards that task? And is that task correct for the group that is actually working together? Then another input is looking at the characteristics in general of each member of the group. So is there a status assigned, and do people respect the status of each other? Do they want to work together as a group or not? And the final input will look at the size of the group. So is the size too big or small, depending on the task at hand? If the size is too big, you'll know for the group, because there won't be enough tasks and responsibilities to go around. And if the group size is too small, you'll also know, because everybody in the group will be stressed and they'll all have too much to do. Now let's look at a model from Tuckman that actually is quite famous in the managerial world and the leadership world. And this looks at the stages of group development. Let's go through each one at a time. So the forming stage is the introduction stage, where everybody is very new to each other. It's the first time they're meeting each other. They might set ground rules. They'll be feeling each other out and trying to understand how they're going to work together as a team or a group. The next stage after forming is storming. This is when reality hits and the weight of the task really becomes clear to everyone, and people may even start panicking. The norming stage is where everybody starts to settle into their roles, they understand each other, they get to know each other, and they're starting to work well together. The performing stage is when everybody is very familiar with each other, they cooperate without supervision, and the group's goals are being achieved. And then the adjourning stage is when the group disbands. So an example of this is if you were to go to university, you would form part of the student group. So the forming stage will be getting to your university, you're very new to the building, you're very new to the people, you have to understand what the rules were about. The storming stage is when you've maybe been to a couple of classes, you realise how much work there is to do, and the other fellow students that you have all feel the same. The norming stage is when you actually start making a few friends, you know your professors really well, and you start settling into the groove of university life. And the performing stage is when you are sailing through, probably by the end of your first semester, you know where all your classes are, you know who your professors are, you know who your friends are, and so do all the other people in your friendship group. And then the adjourning stage would be when you graduate from university and it's time to find a new group of friends. So that is the stages of group development by Tuckman. Now we've had a look at groups, let's have a look at teams. So when we define teams, we see them as small groups of people with complementary skills who all work as a unit. They're all committed to a shared purpose and they all actually have collective accountability. So you likely have many different groups in an organisation that all work together to a shared purpose and they have accountability towards the same thing. But when it comes to groups, the difference between teams and groups is that while teams show collective accountability, groups don't show the same kind of commitment or accountability as opposed to teams. So when it comes to looking at the effectiveness of teams, we have to look at three particular levels. The first level to look at is the team task level. So at the higher end, when it comes to the task the team has been set, what specifically is that task and how will this team achieve it? We then move into the individual needs level. So in order to achieve the task the team has been set effectively, what does each individual need in terms of motivation, in terms of resources, in order to achieve their part of the overall goal? And then we look at the team maintenance level, which is effectively what skills do the team have, what more skills do they potentially need in order to achieve the goal, and how can we actually give them that so that the overall effectiveness is positive for this team. The most effective teams are those that make or do things or those that run things. So for example, if you think about Formula One, and when the driver goes into the pit, the team there will actually repair the car and look after the driver and make sure that everything's running smoothly, all with the objective of getting the driver to hopefully at least finish, if not win the race. That team is very effective because they are doing the job of keeping the car and the driver performing as optimally as possible, and they're running the race that's being raced by the driver. In terms of the direction and purpose of the organisation, when it comes to making teams more effective, the direction and purpose has to be absolutely clear. So we saw earlier in one of the earlier modules where we talked about the value statement and the mission statement. This is where those particular statements become very important in order to clarify the direction and purpose of an organisation to help the team understand its bigger goals and become more effective. The individual team members also have to understand the value that working together brings. If you have one member of the team who decides, actually, I can do all of this on my own, then you end up having a lot of conflict in a team because this person doesn't value the art of working together as a team. Also, in an effective team, your members will be a mix of technical experts, task experts, and those with leadership abilities. So technical experts aren't just programmers, they're people who understand the subject matter the team is tackling, and they're able to advise the team on what to do next. The task experts are those who can actually do the job, and the people with leadership abilities are those that are able to lead the team, to create a vision for the team, and to motivate the team in order to achieve the goal. Another element of an effective team is the ability to agree without resentment. So when there is conflict, when there is disagreement, they're able to do that without actually feeling any animosity or resentment towards each other, because they're all focused on achieving the bigger goal the team has been set. And also another character of an effective team is the ability to feel pride in either what they have achieved or what they will be achieving in the future. That's one of the intrinsic advantages and motivations when people join teams, is that eventually I will feel really proud of the work we've done, not just what we've achieved, but actually how we have achieved it as a team. When you are building a team, there are certain things that you need to have at the foundation in order to build a very effective team. So first of all, when it comes to building the team, you have to have incredibly planned action steps so the team know how they can actually measure their progress, where they're going and where they've been. You also need to be able to identify and analyze the function of the group. So when there are individual groups that form the larger team, what is their identity as a group, and what are they there to do, and how does their individual function add towards the bigger achievement of the goal of the team. When you're building the team, you also must be able to implement changes, and implement changes in a way that doesn't disrupt the flow of the team. So changes could be maybe a slight change of direction in the project that they're working on. It could be an addition of a new team member, or a team member actually leaving, and all of these things can create conflict. But when you're building a team, you have to be able to build a team that's able to handle those changes well. And also, when you are building a team, you have to look at how do we increase effectiveness? What are the various skills of the individuals? Who's going to work in what role? And how are we going to all work together in order to achieve that goal? And on that note, we then now look at teamwork. And this is the second of the foundations in the team building process. So teamwork refers to each individual member of that team working with everybody else well, They have a well-defined set of core values that they actually buy into as a team. So these core values will help them realign themselves when they start to feel some conflict. They all know why they're there and what they're there to do. And then teamwork also looks at how we can accomplish certain goals. The team will set the goals either for themselves or have goals set for them, and each individual will understand their unique contribution in order to have that goal achieved. When it comes to building your team, there are specific goals that you should set yourself. To actually have a set of core values and direct behavior that you have agreed to as a team. So for example, if you are working on a project team, you may agree that one of our core values is respect. So we will respect people to share their experiences and their opinions, and they are sharing them in an environment of trust, which basically means nobody is judged by what they actually have to say. And then direct behavior will relate to, for example, in our team meetings, we allow everybody to speak when we ask an opinion, nobody is left out. Or we have a team meeting once a week where we all catch up and everybody has to be there. It is non-negotiable. You then build a team by creating a general goal and then sifting that down to specific performance objectives. And what this means is that each individual in the team understands their responsibility in making the goals of the team actually happen. You then need to develop a mixed skill set in the team to actually give high performance. If you have the same people with the same skill on each team, it will become very difficult for the team to actually perform well, whereas if you had a mixed set of skills, people will play off each other and work well with each other in order to achieve the goal of the team. And finally, one thing you can also do to build your team is to enhance creativity in task performance. And what this means is that the individual now knows what tasks they have to achieve in order to add that towards the goal of the team. And then they have the authority to be creative in how they can achieve those particular tasks, of course within the rules of the team and the organization. When it comes to the performance and cohesiveness of the team norms are incredibly important. These are rules or standards of behavior that are agreed to within the team, and they are displayed by each team member. Now, the way that you set the rules and standards of the team comes from the team themselves, because otherwise, if the team don't decide it, they won't buy into it. So rather than being told, this is what a standard of behavior is, this is what a rule is, the team together decide what that rule and standard of behavior will be. They actually also agree on a code of conduct, which identifies powers, duties, and rights, and it basically gives a clear idea to each individual on who has the authority to do what. Another way to ensure that your team is performing well and is cohesive is to look at team roles and the dynamics of those roles. So a role in a team is a set of expectations for a person who's in a particular position. When you have ambiguity in roles, that's when you start to get conflict in a team. Each individual member of the team needs to understand what their specific role and their responsibility is in order for them to work in that way and actually enhance the performance of the team. When you have uncertainty in expectations, you then start having conflict. You might have two people who think they are responsible for the same thing, and then you see two people basically doing the same job. It can create conflict. So you need to be able to set an expectation for your team in terms of who's doing what in their roles, because if you don't, then it's difficult to kind of bring people back to the beginning. It is far easier to set the roles and responsibilities at the very start when the team gets together first, so that everybody knows where they stand. Let's now look at a quadrant of team performance and team cohesiveness, and you'll see on the bottom left you have negative performance and low cohesiveness, which basically results in very moderate to low performance. This means that the team isn't working well together and they also are not achieving their goals. In the top left quadrant you have high team cohesiveness, but negative team performance. What this basically means is that the team seem to be well suited as a bunch of individuals, but they're not very well suited in terms of their skills in order to achieve the goals the team has been set. Then in the top right quadrant, you have high team cohesiveness and high team performance. And this is effectively the best situation you can be in because you have the right individuals in the right roles with the right skills, performing the job they need to do to achieve the goals of the team. And then in the bottom right quadrant, you have low team cohesiveness, but actually positive team performance, which gives a moderate performance overall because the team is working well together. But it may be that even though they work well together as a team, they may not have the right skills in order to achieve the goals of the team and make it high performing. So that is the quadrant of team performance and cohesiveness. Now, how can you actually influence team cohesiveness? The first thing that you need to do is to increase where performance norms are positive. So praise people for a job well done will allow them to do a job better. But actually, team cohesiveness will decrease when performance norms are negative. So you have a lack of trust and high conflict. So in order to increase the cohesiveness of your team, you then as a leader have to see how can we build more trust and reduce conflict. And we can cover some of this, we will be covering some of this in an upcoming module. Now let's have a look at some targets of a team that can actually increase or decrease cohesion. So first of all, let's look at goals. You can either create disagreement that decreases cohesion, or getting agreement will increase cohesion. So how can you get each of the individuals in the team together to agree towards a goal? When you get them to agree, the cohesiveness increases. Let's have a look at another example. In terms of competition, when you focus within the team, so when individual team members become quite competitive, this has a negative effect on cohesion. Whereas actually, if they start competing with other teams, cohesion then becomes positive because the individuals in the team start working together. When we look at location, an increased contact with other teams will decrease cohesion because it takes the attention of the team away from them and onto other teams. Whereas if they're isolated from other teams, they become more cohesive because they are with each other and they only have each other to use in order to achieve the goal. In terms of membership, heterogeneity will look at actually the individuals not feeling like they're part of that particular team, and that decreases cohesion. Whereas if you actually increase homogeneity, it actually also increases cohesion. But sometimes this can have a negative effect because it might actually encourage people to have the groupthink mentality, and they will shut out all other opinions, and this can sometimes make the team be less creative. There are different ways that you can actually inhibit and enhance a team, so make a team work better or make them not work better together. First of all, let's look at how the team members are chosen. If you have a theory or an understanding in the team that someone has to do it, now it's your turn, you're selecting people based on a hierarchy. So rather than allowing them to use their skills and their relevant experience to achieve the goal, you're just kind of passing the responsibility from one person to another. So you have to have a process by which team members are chosen. Another way of enhancing or inhibiting a team is to look at the history amongst the team members. If they've never worked together before, or they have a history of rivalry, it can be difficult for them to work together. Whereas if they've worked together successfully in the past, or they know they'll take a bit of time to get to know each other and work well together, you can then enhance the performance of the team. In terms of how the team members are prepared, you can inhibit the performance of the team if the team members don't know what their goals are, they don't know what the team mission is, and they don't know what they're there for. So the best way that you can actually enhance the performance of the team is to make sure that there is a clear connection between why each person is here, what the bigger goal is, and how they will work as individuals and as a team to get there. Another way to either inhibit or enhance the way a team works together is actually who explains the mission of the team. So it's inhibited if it's actually left up to the functional leader. But if a senior manager actually demonstrates the importance of the mission, the team feel like they have something bigger to buy into. This also feeds into who leads the team. So you inhibit the performance of the team if the leader assumes that everybody is on board from day one, but doesn't sort of encourage people to have fun, doesn't know how to manage conflicts, and has a command and control method of managing, which is to just tell people what to do. But you can enhance the cohesiveness of a team if you recognize that there are stages in which the team actually grows, and the leader is not afraid of conflict, is able to accept the role of perhaps a facilitator rather than a key decision maker. Another way to either enhance or inhibit a team is how the team will be judged and compensated. So team performance is inhibited if the team continues to be judged for sometimes poor performance, and only compensated when their performance is actually in line with their functional duties. But actually, the performance of a team is enhanced if from the very beginning the teams are aware of how they'll be assessed, what their compensation will be, and what they're actually all working towards. There are different types of teams that work together. There are problem-solving teams where the workers are a quality circle or an autonomous team that will provide the option to achieve goals. They are a task force with a very limited task, probably done in a limited time frame. And you also have the management as part of that team, where they provide the training for certain techniques and they provide access to information. There are different types of workplace teams as well. The self-managed teams are actually teams of functional and technical expertise. They have problem-solving, decision-making skills and very good interpersonal skills. The workers will need to actually have all of that in order to become self-managing. And the managers themselves will actually empower the team to manage themselves and manage each other, and actually show a collective responsibility for the team to achieve its goal. Another benefit of the self-managed team is that they are typically more productive. They respond to change faster. They have fewer levels of hierarchy or classification of management. They have lower absenteeism and turnover, and actually they have a better work attitude because they are all pretty autonomous. Another type of team in the workplace is a virtual team. So they interdependently seek common goals across space and time. So they're more likely to be situated in their individual offices. They don't physically sit together. That could be in the same country or in different countries or even on different continents. There's a high dependency on technology, so they use video conferencing, phone calls, chats, Skype, Slack, that kind of thing to manage the team environment. There are non-verbal cues that just do not exist sometimes within this virtual team environment, especially if they're having a phone call or a conference call with no video. It's difficult to interpret what people are saying. They interact digitally mainly, so the physical interaction, the human way of responding is limited to them. Sometimes they may be limited by time, so because they're in different time zones, or even they have a very restricted time for having meetings, can actually either stop them from doing well or actually increase their efficiency. The degree of public to private communication is important because they are more likely to be communicating on email or on systems like Slack or Trello, and sometimes these will be recorded, sometimes they won't be recorded. Now let's have a quick summary of what we covered in today's module on groups and teams. We looked at the types of groups and teams that exist and their effectiveness, how the groups and teams meet individual and organizational needs, how you manage for group effectiveness, the inputs that you have to effective teams, the effective groups, the processes of groups and the group dynamics, the tasks and maintenance outputs of groups. We looked at teams and approaches to team building. I also looked in a lot of detail into team performance and cohesion. And that brings us to the end of our module on groups and teams.